Namaste, namastizzle. Peace and blessings. Greetings. Shalom. What's up, everybody? On this day of the sun, I am Magic Lacroix. As you can see, I have a special guest today. He is an occultist, he's an author, very knowledgeable brother, very articulate and intelligent. Please help me welcome the professor, Michael Bell. What's going on, brother?
Oh man, I appreciate the intro.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's a good day, man. I've been looking forward to being on the platform. So, you
Okay.
know, I'm excited to be here.
Good. Glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that. Um, Before we even get started, for those of the people who will be watching this broadcast and the replay, who is the professor? Who is Michael Bell?
Okay. Shoot. I mean, in the most simplest terms, uh, we try not to describe ourselves by the things we do.
Right.
We're
Okay.
encouraged to just be. However, I'm a husband,
Mm,
a father. Um, uh, in terms of like the occultism and esoteric, I pretty much feel like I'm like everybody else. We all found different paths for different reasons, but
right.
they all align for the same purposes, which is we felt as though there was more to it. At
Right.
some
Right.
point, we all got kind of fed up and saying it got to be something more than what's going on.
Mm,
And so
exactly.
to
Mm,
describe me as Michael Bell and as the professor. The professor is the professor aspect is that studious nature in me.
okay.
Um, when we find the synchronicities in our life and you reflect back, I found that even before I got on this path, as a kid, mind you, as a teenager, and I grew up in the hood. You know what I'm saying? I
Right.
don't make no, I'm articulate, I read, I'm intelligent, but I grew up in the hood. I'm from Richmond, California.
Mm,
And so
mm.
as a kid, when I was out there wilding out, uh, my homeboys used to call me the super genius, right?
Okay. Okay.
That was the little nickname because I was always reading something, always explaining
Mm,
something, And
right.
so as time progressed, I became a Prince Hall Shriner,
Okay.
and so who we are shines out no matter the situation, the circumstance. So while I was going through that, just because of my studious nature, everybody began to call me the professor. So
Ah.
that's where that came from, the
Okay.
professor. Because I've
Okay.
always been, who I am now. It's amazing when you look back. It's almost like we live our lives in reverse because the attributes and characteristics that we display,
Mm,
they actually begin at a very young age and then they manifest as we progress. So looking backwards, it's always a straight line and you can see where all the dots connected. But in the most simplest terms, I always like to say that Michael Bell, as who I am as a person, I'm an eternal student
mm,
that
mhm,
keeps
mhm.
excellent notes. So I always share my notes, and that's why I was driven to write. That's why I always try to share my insights, and I
Right.
try to always present it in a way that everybody can get something from it, no matter what level they might be on.
Damn. That- Thanks for that. That's truly a great description. Thanks for saying that. We have a lot of things in common. Right off the bat, I'm from the hood. I'm from Philadelphia, North Philly to be exact. And was always outside reading while everybody else is the other stuff. I was sitting there reading. So a lot of things in common. And I just want to say a couple of shouts out to people who are in the chat. Cosmic Chaos, peace. Uh, they removed Ani's last video. Oh, okay. I don't remember. I don't. Okay, I'll get back to that. The doctor. Okay. Let's see. And that's your comment there. Okay. Peace to Portia, and she says peace to you too. Peace. Denise Alvarado's in the building. Okay. And Dom Money. Okay. Thanks y'all for joining us today. And of course, my missus is here. So okay. Yeah, like I said, a lot of things in common there. I'm glad to see that. So for you, how long has it been this particular field? How long have you been doing this kind of work?
Um, okay, I'm gonna give you the long version as short as possible.
Please do. Please do.
Uh, you know, like I said, you look back and you see that you were meant to be where you are.
Right.
There's that level of acceptance. But I'll say, like for me, I grew up as a reader into anything science fiction always grabbed my attention.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so from the books, and then I'm gonna be honest too, my first introduction to all of this was growing up a Jehovah's Witness reading the Bible, and I always saw the Bible
Okay.
with the kid's imagination. You see spirits and
Right.
magical spells being thrown
Right.
around, and
Exactly.
rivers being turned into blood, and
Right.
it incites
Right.
the imagination. But I
Right.
want to say that around the late '90s, I'd always been a studious reader. I stepped away. I backed up from once I turned 16. Told my mother I didn't want to be a Jehovah's Witness anymore.
Mhm.
I was starting to live two lives because on one hand I'm going to all these meetings. Jehovah's Witnesses have a lot of meetings.
Yeah.
I will go to all these meetings,
Yeah.
and I appreciate that for my path. I know I chose that for my path because that's what got me on my being studious, reading, my comprehension. But around
Mhm.
16, I was leaning more towards the street than that. So I stepped away, but there was something in me that still longed for the spiritual. And so I found myself starting to still look for it, but I just figured maybe it's just not being a Jehovah's Witness because I was still external with it.
Right.
But I want to say, and then in between from 16 until probably 28, I had almost took my shahada, almost became a Muslim. I didn't like that, but I still anything I do, I dive in head first. I did become a Buddhist, a Siddha Buddhist for a little bit. I was still searching, and so around late '90s, something in me just was saying like I knew magic was real or not, but I had that understand. I had that Harry Potter thought. I thought like, man,
Right.
it was more like for me, I related everything to the force. I felt like, man, I should be levitating stuff, and I should, I should.
Right.
It just felt too tangible. But long
Right.
story short, around the late '90s, I was probably about 26, 27. Friend of mine had a Bobby Hemmett VHS.
Mm.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. So I came across a Bobby Hemmett video, and I'm gonna be honest. I always tell it the same way. My first impression was probably like everybody else. I used to be like, "Man, this dude is hilarious. Who is this dude?"
Yeah.
He was funny.
Yeah.
But what I took from it, I was always one of them dudes that, like most of us growing up, we always knew there was a deeper story told by these movies. So the
Mm.
first time I heard him decode a movie, that's what got me. And then on top of that, you grow up, especially in black communities, when you're going to church and stuff, you got one person giving you an interpretation of what you're reading, and that's just the Bible. He was the first person I had seen that was dropping a dozen books every lecture. Because that first one I saw, we devoured that one over and over. My boy, where he had got it from, we never thought to go back and get another one. It'd just be like, man, throw that dude back in again, man. Why check that out again, right?
Right. Right.
And so after a few years of that, I'll be honest and say that Bobby Hemmett, we ended up getting a few more because I'm on the West Coast, so it's not as prevalent. At that time, it wasn't. So
Right.
we got a few more, and one of his main themes was chakras, and that stuck with me. So my very first introduction, I started working. I wanted to experience a Kundalini rush. That became like my first little goal,
Mm.
and and even then, I'll be honest and say that since I was still external with it, started to get frustrated because I hadn't experienced, his experience.
Right.
So there were two things working at odds with each other. Number one, I was looking to have Bobby's experience. I hadn't reached that point where
Mm.
I had to have my own experience, right? But
Right.
it still took a while for that to happen. But I worked hard on chakras. So since I couldn't get the Kundalini rush, I wanted that Bobby Hemmett description of the Kundalini. So I just dove in studiously. I figured because I actually had a good friend. He was a mentor to me. And I look back now, he was the first person that taught me how to astral project. And
Okay.
he taught me in a different way. So what he told me was, since you're always reading, he said, when you read a book, you should be in that place. When you, by the time you finish the book, you should be there. You should, when you go to sleep, you should be there. And so I was thinking, like, how the hell you do that? So he gave me a simple trick, a tip. When you read your book, he was like, dive all the way in. Don't space it out over a week. If you can finish, if you can shut everything down and finish it in a day, I guarantee you when you go to sleep, you'll be there. So I'll never forget, at that time, I was reading a book about what was her name? The female pharaoh. I can't think of her name now. Nepsepshut, what was her name? Oh, I'm wrong
Ne-
for forgetting.
Nepetshut
Shep-
or
Shep-
Nepetshut or
yeah,
I think I know who you're talking about though. Yeah.
it was Hatshepsut. So mind you,
Yeah.
I'm a 20-something-year-old. I'm reading this book, and I did what he said. I dove in, and sure enough, I was in Kemet that night. But I thought it was just a dream,
Right.
and I'm watching obelisks get erected and things like that. So I just thought that was a dope little trick. Well, around that same time, and then, now that I'm talking to you, I'm gonna be honest. I just had a revelation for myself.
Mm.
Around that same time, my mother passed in '99.
My condolences.
Thank you. She's still here. She sometimes she laugh at my frustrations, but she's still here.
Good.
Uh, Around that same time when I was starting to perfect this technique, because I thought that was the only way to have these experiences was to dive all the way into a book, fact, fiction or nonfiction. And I'm telling you, anybody listening, it works. But the key to it is, what I realized later is, it's a very simple thing to say, but the mechanics of it is, most of us do not realize, but you read with your imagination. There's a small group of us that when we read words. There's others, there's a huge majority, I want to think, that when you read, you have images that pop up in your mind. And these images start to take on life. Now, the reason why I noticed this hack, because I would tell other people and they'll say, I did it and then nothing happened. So I had to investigate. The thing is, some people don't read with their imagination. You have to involve the imagination, because scenes start to take place, and this happens even in a non-fictional book. And so what gave me the key for that tip was, I would suggest books to people to read, and they would say, I would say something I got from a book, and people would say, where did you get that? And I tell them the book. They'll say, I read it and it wasn't in there. That's when I started realizing that I was having inner dialogue with what I was reading. It wasn't coming from the book, but I had inner dialogue. I can even tell you the section where I got it from. I tell people, man, go to the 3rd chapter. He's going to be talking about this and that. But no, that was from the activation of your imagination throughout the process. But anyway, getting back to the topic, when my mother passed, I fell out with my siblings, and which is something that's very common. When death happens, it either brings people together or breaks them apart.
Break them apart.
I fell out with my siblings, and I said, "All y'all dead to me. You don't exist no more." I mean, and I stood on my word for some months, and so I had a very vivid dream. It was me and my mother. We were sitting talking, and at the time, she was telling me not to be so hard on my sister. Your brother's going through this, your sister's going through that, and your nephews is doing this. And I can still remember just like trying to combat my mom. Nah, but they, no, but nah, mom, but they, like that. And
Right.
so, but however, when I woke up, the mere fact that my mom had just recently transitioned, I cried real tears. Like, man, I saw my mom again, And so that motivated me to call my big sister. And as soon as I called her, oh Mike, you don't know, my son's is going through this, and it was everything my mom had told me, and I hadn't had any dealings with any of them. No way I would have known none of it. You know how sometimes the logical part of our mind would just say, oh well, somebody told you this, you read that, you kind of put no, I had zero contact, and my mom, who had been dead for months, told me everything that was going on. So
Wow.
that right there told me, oh, it is real. So, very short version, man, my whole goal was to have that conversation again with my mom. And that's what
Mm.
made me go. That's what made me go full dark side. I said, whatever power, whatever I tapped into, I needed
Right.
again. Because I just wanted
Right.
to, have that conversation with my mom again. However, it still took me a while. And being a scientist, you experiment. We're all scientists on some level, And so I experimented, read a lot of books on astral travel, meditation, visualization, things like that. And so I started to piece together uh, little tips and tricks. And that's why, like I say in the beginning, that I keep good notes and I share. And that's when I realized too that the imagination and visualization goes a long way, because what I ended up doing to have that setting with my mom again, which is something now that I can actually do on call, you set the scene with your imagination. You use visualization. You see yourself in that same place. I believe it might have been Panic who said, you visualize yourself somewhere that you're really comfortable, big mama house, your mom, somewhere that you're familiar with and comfortable. You set the scene and then you launch from there. So with my mom, with the situation with mom, I would revisit it so much that I actually started to play in that little space. So I would go in and she'd be in that chair and I would walk behind her. I would look up and down. You start to explore the little space you in. And then that's when you start to realize that it's a little something more going on here.
Mm.
So, so just long story short, for me, uh, it came out of an intense selfish desire,
Right.
which I think we
Right.
all do, whether you started because you needed to pay your rent, or maybe you
Mm-hmm.
wanted to put a love spell on somebody. It was all selfish.
Okay.
So, but from there, I think that you come in for the selfish personal reasons, but then you
Mm.
get selfless because you start to realize the truth of the matter is that it's very cliche, but we're all one. It's just different aspects of self. So you get there, and a huge part of my selflessness and being a professor and sharing my notes, because when I did get serious about this path, it coincided with Facebook, right? I want to say like maybe back when Facebook was brand new, like 2010.
2000.
For me, it was 10,
Okay. Yeah.
because at that time it was like that's for old people to share cats, cat videos and stuff.
Right.
Well, my wife had actually set up a Facebook account for me just to keep up with family and stuff like that. And so you start to find the different groups. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'll never forget, I was in one of these groups around this time, 2010, definitely no later than 12. It was one of those 9 ether being groups. And I had a ton,
Mm.
I had a
Okay.
ton of questions. Man,
Right.
never got an answer. Everybody,
Never.
everybody send you off on a baby mission. Go learn this and come back with it. Go, and you figure at the time it's like, you know what? I'm willing to put in the work. I'll go do it. But I begin to realize that for real, I'm asking people that don't know themselves.
Mm.
You know, because a
Mm-hmm.
person that know you now, when you become the knower, you recognize other knowers. And so
Right.
I started because I started to realize it. And what truly woke me up was the fact that I was one of those who truly and sincerely believed when the student was ready, the master would appear. So I worked hard to prepare myself and started to get disappointed again. Like, man, where the fuck is my master? Where's he
All
at?
right.
My teacher should have been my own personal Bobby Hemmett or whoever should have appeared by now. I know my beacon is shining bright, but
Right.
then I came to the realization just that it's you. You the teacher. You done woke up yourself.
Wow.
You're a teacher and student. So just in terms of how I got there, like I said, I always had this deep, intense desire. I knew something in me that you kind of feel like it makes you special, that
Right.
you be able to do more than what you're displaying or demonstrating in the moment. And then from there, like I said, it got selfish with my mom passing, and it taught me that all the tools that we pick up, even when we consider ourselves to be in the dead state, we say now that person's dead or that person ain't woke, but we each have access to that higher self. So even when you think you might be in a dead state, you're actually still moving in accordance with your own time schedule. You know what I'm saying? It's gonna
Yeah.
happen, and
Absolutely.
you're just picking up different tools that you're gonna need. So that's something I also want to say.
Yeah.
Don't don't set down the tools you picked up back when one of the things I learned, like I said, I grew up in the hood. Uh, I began to catalog different types of people. There's something I did as a youth. I would put people in little categories, right? Well, once I got the understanding of why I had these categories, those could be used for invocation. It'd be moments, be moments when you say, "Yeah, I need to go ahead and let the donkey out on this person." It don't got to be your donkey. It could be somebody that goes there in the manner that you need, and you invoke that person. You become, if not become that person, you adopt those characteristics. So I just use that as one example to say we pick up these tools almost instinctually, but then we reach a certain point and you say, well, I don't need that no more. No, you
Right.
you
Right.
you, you gather all those tools to use right now. And
Right.
so that's what I learned. So again, anybody that know me, I share my own. I got a weird sense of humor. I share it every chance I get. But those who truly understand me know that there's a lesson buried in each one. I try to drop little breadcrumbs and jewels because I also know that I went through the same phase of when you're trying to wake everybody up.
Mm-hmm.
Wake
Mm-hmm.
up, like Lawrence Fishburne, wake up.
Right. School days. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But you start to realize that, man, it ain't they turn.
Right.
And
Right.
if you continue to force it,
Mm-hmm.
I was telling years ago, this is decades ago, when I first started decoding movies, and I was telling my friend, we were talking about he asked me to decode zombie movies, and I said, oh, I already did it. The infection, I said that the zombie movies are infectious ideas. When you force somebody awake and you infect them with an idea that's not their own, and now they walk around like zombies biting other people. And now the in the most literal sense to me, when they bite you, now you're talking about politics and religion, and you're just a walking dead. You're an animated corpse. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's why I don't throw alarm clocks in the graveyard anymore. You know,
Wow. Okay.
uh, uh, I'm gonna be me. I'm gonna talk my talk. If you're around,
All
if
right.
you happen to be around, and I try to talk in a manner that when you speak to a group of people, you meet everybody on their level. So I don't go as hard as I used to, but those that know, those who are in the know, we talk and we build and we do it like that. And so what I found, one of my most profound and like success stories, that same time period I told you about back in Facebook, back in 2010, 2012,
Mm-hmm.
I was also one of those dudes, and I like to speak on it, that I waited for Sunday to go in.
Mm-hmm.
Sunday was my day. I'm finna bash this Bible. I'm finna talk bad about it.
Right. Right.
And so my godmom, she called me one day and said, I see what you've been putting on that Facebook. Yeah. Oh, what's going on, legend? Yeah, my brother. So uh she kind of scolded me about, going in on Sundays, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't stop, but it never left my mind that, along the same lines of what I just said about trying to wake people up. That if it's not
Right.
for them, it's not for them. But long story short, I moderated. I moderated my get down for my own reasons, not for nobody else. But I realized that I'm throwing vinegar around when it should be honey, right?
Right.
So years later, this is maybe 2 or 3 years ago. So some decade plus passed, and I saw her, and she was like, you need to meet my group. I meet with a group of women. I'm thinking already like, I'm not sitting in no sewing circle, right? These old ladies, we don't got nothing in common. Why I gotta meet these women? Well, long story short, they had a chakra meditation group,
Okay.
and so you figure this was somebody that die hard in the Bible, church going, and would tell me when I talked about chakras, that was like almost like talking about Satan, you know. And after me being consistent in who I am, me shining my light, and you seeing that ain't no horns grow out my head, I still love my family, I still go to work, I still, all these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
That had a more profound effect than me trying to bang them over the head with it. Because another thing I learned, and I'll be brief with it, is that the ego was like the gatekeeper, right?
Mm.
That's why there's certain mediums that can slide past the gatekeeper. Like comedy is one of those things that you kind of let your guards down, so you come in to enjoy yourself and laugh, and you say.
Right.
So a lot of that's why jesters, that's why the jokester, the comedian, the court jester, that's
Hmm.
why they always had a sacred space, because they're able to communicate directly with you. They can get around that gatekeeper.
Right.
And so I found that you're not battling that person, you're battling their ego, which is just their self-defense, just to protect them.
Hmm.
And the more you become blase background noise, and that's just by being you, not banging no drum,
Right.
not with a loudspeaker on the corner telling everybody they finna die. You just
Right.
be you.
Right.
That's how you get past the gatekeeper and the message actually soak in.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, very profound, brother. Thanks for that. Like I said, we have a lot of things in common. The path, and the route to it, and going past that of I'm trying to wake people up. I went so far past that these days. All I do on my Facebook is post hilarious memes these
Hmm.
days. But at one time I was posting knowledge like every single day, and I was getting put in jail like every single
Yeah. Yeah.
day. I got tired of that, and so yeah, Bobby's words finally rang true when
Hmm.
it's not for the masses. The masses ain't good. The way he said it was the masses ain't good for shit but dying, is the way
Hmm.
he said it. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, very much a very similar path. That is a very interesting shirt you have on, man. Can I
Oh,
ask who that is?
are A. Rashid?
I do. I do.
He makes these shirts, man. Whenever I'm actually I'm waiting on. He has a Kamala Harris one right now, and they
Okay.
always fire, man. So I get them because,
Okay.
again, signs and symbols are powerful. I can wear this shirt.
Absolutely.
I can wear this shirt. Most people look right past it, but every now and then you get that one person like, let me see, is that
Yeah.
Boogie?
Yeah,
You know,
that's a cool shirt. I
no,
like
this
that.
this this is a dope tee. One of my favorites, man. One of
Okay.
my favorites. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Um, is there a specific practice that you have, or you a jack of all trades, or how does that work with you as far as occultism?
Yeah. I I have the jack of all trades, right? I have
Mhm.
that aspect, but you got to finish that saying out too, jack of all trades, master of
Master of
none.
none. Hmm.
But a jack of all trades is better than a master of none.
Right. Right.
However, I will say I do have my meat and potatoes, you
Okay.
know, and so for me, uh, my meat and potatoes. I mentioned one earlier, which is chakras. Always for me, that's part of my foundation, and then the other part is Kabbalah.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so
Okay.
I use I constantly experiment with different meditations. I've done a lot of different experimental chakra works within myself because I'm the laboratory, and I'm the beaker, and I'm the little experimental animal in the lab.
Okay.
And so I experiment a lot, and in my experimentations, that's where the jack of all trades comes in best, because you can actually borrow from different traditions
Yeah.
and make it work. And see, and the thing about it is, only reason why I would suggest it, because it doesn't work for everybody. Some of us need a clear cut path, and that there's nothing wrong with it. But for others, you need something a little more that might not be as you might not demand such rigid structure, right? You might be able to
Right.
have a little freedom. So for me, and I'm
Right.
assuming it's because I'm sometimes I get trapped in my head, my imagination, and things like that. I
Mm.
needed something a little tailor made, and so I found myself. I experiment. I kind of follow the spirit. So if I feel a mood, like I said, and if you think about it, I said it earlier, I almost became a Muslim. I
Hmm.
did these different paths, and so
Right.
I kind of adopted different practices. I work with them, and I'll be honest, I still try new stuff in my meditations. I try to incorporate something, and actually, I've reached a point now where I'm not surprised, but when I get direct results, sometimes I'll be like, "Yeah, that ain't the result I want. I'm gonna leave that alone for now."
Right.
I'm gonna leave that alone for now, because you do you even though it's all happening inside of you, you know, uh, unless you've mastered it's a technique. Samuel Onweor said, he says he calls it Jinn travel, where
Mm.
you can go in meditation or astral projection, go to a location and physically step out in your body. I haven't mastered that. Until you master that, everything is going on internally. But you're still going to be confronted by things that are going to shock and surprise you, scare you. I still reach that point. Now, you kind of think that you're over it, but I'll say that the things that kind of shock, surprise, and scare me now, if I told you about it, you'd say that's nothing. Because for me, when I say something that might scare or shock me, it's more of internal revelations that I've hidden from myself. So those are the only scary demons that I encounter when I realize that there's something
Okay.
that I've truly been kind of ducking, and you kind of see it. Oh, you know what? I share one example with you, real
Sure.
quick, real
Mhm.
quick. Remember, I told you my mom, I would revisit that scene with her all the time.
Right.
Well, it got to the point that I would go there not to talk to my mom, because that was like the first place that I could revisit, and I knew that I have an out of body experience, right?
Mm.
So I would go there just to practice, I would practice zooming in on stuff. I used to have different little angles to look at different scenes. I still laugh. I actually had a roach angle. I would be on the wall and I'd take up the position like a roach on the wall, and I could see things from that little weird angle. I would just
Right.
just to
Right.
play
Right.
around, just to play around. And so one day I was in there, and like I said, my mom is sitting there. She's not talking, because now I'm not even coming to talk to her anymore, right?
Right.
So in the middle of playing, I went and said, let me go look at my mom. Because, you kind of reach that point too where you say, well, this really ain't my mom. This is,
Right.
this is,
Right.
I'm projecting it. So I'm like, well, let me go over here and experiment and interact with this. Well, when I went to her, I was behind her, and my face came out the back of her head and said, this is all you. Man, shook me up. I shut that down. It was like,
Oh, wow.
but I've told this to other people, in real life, and they've been like, man, that ain't even scary, man. It's all you. But no, I wasn't ready for it. That it caught me off guard to
Right.
where I didn't revisit that. I had to really like swallow that pill. And even though I knew it instinctively, that's why I was experimenting in that room and not engaging her, because it was truly all me. I could have went to that room and not manifested her there. I could have just went to the room, you
Right.
know.
Right.
And so a part of me was like, well, since you playing, let me go ahead and interject some of this real. This is all you. You ain't talking to your mom, and so
Right.
it shook me up.
Okay.
Basically, if it was a laptop, I would have closed the lid and said, yeah, I ain't going back
I
to
ain't
that.
doing that.
You know,
Right.
but the thing is, you embody that scientific method, and you just go back with a better understanding. So it's just a space that I find where I call it peaks and plateaus. Uh, you'll put in your work, and while you're putting in the work, you're climbing towards the peak. Well, you never truly reach the top. So when you get to the top of the peak, it's a plateau, flatland. And so you might have been still in climb mode and you want to keep climbing, but right now it's like I'm not peaking anymore. It's just leveled out. Well, that's not it. What's really happening is this is where you reevaluate where you are. You might even make sure that you've truly integrated what you've just learned.
Hmm.
And then when you least expect it, you'll find yourself climbing up again. You're headed towards
Right.
another peak. And so that's when I learned that when I get to these plateaus, I used to be very disappointed. I'm be honest. Because usually when I reach a plateau, I've been studying hard, I've been practicing something, I've been doing this, but I'm still kind of fiending for the new experiences and for the, what I was heading towards. But this is just where you start to integrate. Might even be something you might have to drop off. You might not be able to take something with you. You might be at that plateau because you might be there longer than you want to be. And
Right.
that's because you haven't shedded some kind of weight. It's something that you can't take with you.
Gotcha.
And so just all in all, man, I have a huge library. Actually, it was a lot bigger. I suffered a fire about a year ago. And
Yeah, I remember that. I hope everything has returned to normal for you.
not yet, but normal is still subjective anyway, right?
Right. Right. Right.
And that's partly what I'm going through now is adjusting to my new normal,
Okay.
because I realized that I had four bookshelves, and I had
Books.
books on books. I'm talking
Mm.
about. I'm sure I had close to 600 books because I had books on my bookshelf. I had books on my nightstand, books on the floor, books inside drawers. I had books everywhere. So when the fire happened, I'll be honest, and this is something a year later, I'm just now able to be honest with myself. Man, my feelings was hurt. you know,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, absolutely.
I had some books that I spent upwards of $300 on. I had several $100 books,
Hmm.
but I'm gonna say this to say because I wanted to say this about the fire, about having the library. Um, Around 2018, I did something that quickened my whole like magical experiences and abilities. So what happened was I always keep good notes. I keep handwritten notes and I keep notes in my phone. I say that too for anybody listening. A lot of people talk bad about journaling, but you want to catalog your meditations and your dreams.
Everything.
You catalog it, and it's not for you to read daily. It's something that you go back to maybe every 90. See,
This is all notes from different years. I keep notes. I'm the same way. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
no, no,
I just
no.
wanted to show that.
I'm glad to see it because a lot of people don't realize it. You don't want to try to keep it all in your head because you can't. And
Right.
when you go back and look, you'll be surprised how many aha moments you'll have and how many
Mhm.
dots that start to connect. Because
Right.
at the time you're a little too close to it. So what I wanted to say was when I spoke about the quickening,
Hmm.
I had got frustrated with whatever I was working on. And so at the time I was burning a lot of ancestor money.
Hmm.
I had a little pit and I would burn the ancestor money and I got super frustrated and I threw my journals in there.
Mm.
And
Really?
in the process of throwing them in there, a part of me, sometimes you just move with the spirit. Part of me just said sacrifice because I knew how important it was to me.
Right.
So I threw it in there, and it was everything I had up to that point. I threw it in there, and I said it's all gonna come back to me 1,000-fold. I said it with attitude too, because I meant it. Yeah.
Right.
It
Right.
all it came from me, and it's gonna come back. And when I tell you, it was like a quickening because how I looked at it later. Back in the days, they would sacrifice a fatted calf or something like that, right? But it always had to be something that meant something to you. It had to be something that was important, something that you were truly sacrificing. You know, Giving up a tithe at church, if it don't hurt, it ain't helping, right? It got to be a real sacrifice.
Right.
So by me doing that, uh, I actually gave up something that meant a lot to me. So I fast forward to the fire, and over a year now, I actually have a little shed over here. Still got about 200 or 300 books in it, and I haven't really worked with them yet. So I had a friend come over yesterday. He's actually a practicing Rosicrucian, and so we were talking, and I said, "Let me show you my Library of Alexandria, where all my books that burned down." Right. So I took him into the little shed and showed them to you, and he said, "Oh man, we got to do a ritual, man. We're gonna do a ritual, water ritual. We're gonna burn some incense, this and that. We're gonna them books." He said, "Man, as soon as I stepped in there, that energy is begging to be let out. You gotta move past it. I know your feelings hurt. You gotta move past it, and we're gonna spark them books up." And it was like a pressure got released off of me
Okay.
because, I hated to even think about it because whenever I thought about the books,
Right.
because they have smoke damage and little
Right.
soot but
Right.
whenever I think about the books that I was able to save, I'd be like, man, but the ones I lost though.
Right.
And
Right.
so you'll be surprised. Like I said, we never reach a point where you don't need a little outside advice, somebody to help you step back from what you're seeing. And then, like I said, this was just yesterday. Matter of fact, we pulled some books out. I have a few sitting around me right now, and I said, I know I grabbed those out for a reason. In fact, I'll show one of them. Okay, this book right here is called
Keys to inner space. Okay.
by Layman Hissey. Book. It was written in 1975. Uh, right now, if you go on Amazon, hardcover is probably about $700. Paperback is probably like 89. I think that when I got it, because I got it some years ago, and I just want to show, all my books. I don't care how much I spend on them. I usually mark them up and put sticky notes in it and stuff like
Right.
that.
Mm-hmm.
At the time when I got it, I want to say it was It was over 100 for the paperback. Now it's a little cheaper, I believe, because when my folks was over here yesterday, he told me that it's less than 100 now. So, but anyway, um, that book was such a surprise. Like I told you, I was on Chakras hard. I'm going to show you the back cover. You can see it. So here he shows the chakra systems along with astrology and the musical notes.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
I'm gonna read some of the chapters: self-hypnosis and meditation, tarot symbology, rhythmic breathing, color and sound, astrological signs, polarity versus duality. That one helped me out a lot because I used to think that polarity and duality was basically two sides of the same coin, and to some degree it is, but there is a definite separation. But this is a book I would recommend.
Okay.
I know for a lot of people, we tend to base it on value, on cost, right?
Right.
For
Right.
$100, that book better dance and sing, right? But
Right.
what I found was that I had mentioned earlier when we first started, I used to listen to all that Bobby Hemmett, right?
Mhm.
And even me being a reader, it took me a few years to even start writing down and start to get the books he was recommending. I was just comfortable just listening. And so what you'll find out is that uh, it's a mode, it's a vibration you got to get into. And so start off where you can. You don't gotta spend $100 on every book. I used to give myself an allowance for books. So every week I would go on Amazon. I would have me a wish list, and then I would go and Google. I would try to find authors similar to, and you find a wish list, and I find the Tubi version of that author, and I buy his book for $5. I get four
Okay.
$5 books, or I spend $20 anyway. But
Right.
you wanna build up your library, and I say that because we spoke offline, and I told you that watching that Asir Duke interview you did,
Mm.
that one he said one thing out of everything. He dropped a lot of jewels, but he said one thing that kind of like re-resonated with me, in that we live at a time where everybody's really prophesizing about end times, and the internet could go down at any moment, and if the banks freeze up, you won't have any money, and we're all talking and basically setting the stage energetically for it to happen. And what he had said was that we'll be all right because we got books. So I'll even say to the people who collect PDFs, that's how I started. Before I bought my first book, I would write down all the authors and I would search for the free PDF. And then what you do is you print that PDF out, and just so you don't have tons of paper sitting everywhere, you can bind it. You can put hole punches and turn it into a book. Make a cover
Mhm.
for it. Make a
Okay.
cover. Print out the cover. Make a cover for it. Laminate it. Use tape. But start to build your library, because what I realize is that books hold a certain type of energy, and so even if you don't actually read the book, uh, it's like your light shines brighter just for having it. And I have some books that I've paid a lot of money for, and I only got it for one chapter anyway. And I read that chapter and I was straight, you know. So, but getting back to the fire, it took me a while to realize that it was that same sacrifice.
Mhm.
It was like my 10th. I had to give up a portion, and
Right.
and I'm not gonna sit here and bang my chest and say I'm holier than anybody, because it still took me a year and 1 month to finally accept. I knew what it was, but I had to accept it, that yeah, you lost it, but it's all coming back to you a thousandfold. And
Right.
and I'll tell you something else. I've known I wanted to write books since I was a youngster. I thought it was going to be comic books, and I thought it was going to be fantasy novels, and I would start writing those. Started writing. My big brother has actually made comic books. My big brother has written for. He works for. He inspects nuclear power plants. He's written manuals,
Mm.
bestsellers too. He write manuals, and I tell him I've told him in the past, them ain't bestsellers. They gotta buy your book. Them plants gotta buy it. You ain't no bestseller. But anyway, uh,
Right.
I always knew I wanted to write, and so I could never settle on a topic. The Star Trek book I just released, I wrote that book in 2008, but it didn't
Oh,
feel
wow.
right. didn't feel right. I didn't put it out. I just kept feeling, waiting for that right feeling. So I would go in meditation, and everything was about encouraging, giving birth to this first book that was truly me. I was in meditation, and I encountered a representation of my higher self, and I had words for him. You know, I had
Mm.
words. Man, why haven't I wrote this book yet? You know what I'm saying? What's going on? And this and that, this and that,
Right.
and just very calmly told me, you've written more books than you've ever read. Basically, chill out, dude.
Right.
You might think this is something special for this lifetime, but this is what you do. So
Right.
just chill out and be about it. And so I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna show you this book. So what came about from that was this book. This is my first book that I wrote
I remember when you released it.
during the pandemic. And you know what's crazy? I gotta say this. One of my meditations before the pandemic, I used to meditate on everything in the world shutting down for a day. That was a daily meditation. And so I would go in there and I would visualize everything shutting down. And so logically your mind fills in gaps and you start to see things. So I said, oh, gonna be a lot of deaths because ambulance is not moving. And and I would just do it every day. I would visualize it. And actually I came up with that meditation because I felt like I didn't have enough time to write. And I kept telling myself, if only everything was shut down for one day, I'll be able to start writing this book. I'll be able to give birth. Well, guess
Right.
what happened? Guess what happened? We had a pandemic. It didn't get shut down for a day. It got shut down for a whole lot of days.
Yeah, a couple years.
And so what happened for me was pandemic kicked in. I mean, it took me about 2 weeks to say, man, you've been meditating and waiting on this. If you don't start writing right now,
Right now, right, right,
and
right.
that's what I did. And that's how I gave birth. I literally, maybe less than a month into the pandemic,
Mm.
I went crazy. I couldn't. Most times I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop. I took notes for this book for about 6 years, and I felt like I was just getting the habit of setting aside notes, and that was becoming my frustration. And I still did not put everything into this one book, and I still was taking stuff out, like because I think I was on Konami Code's platform, and I was explaining how when you start to when you're being creative, period, whether it's musically, uh, uh, if you're artistic, if you're a painter, a drawer,
Right.
writing, you tap into something that's much greater than yourself, and that is a channel in and of itself. And so with this first book, I experienced something that nobody could have prepared before, even if they had told me, which is you have to turn that channel off. You got to turn that faucet off because it'll keep running. And while it's keep running, you get just getting bombarded with information. I used to have information. I would have to take stuff out this book because I couldn't confirm it. I didn't know where it came from. That's not even my little lane of study. And I'm like, I don't even know where this came from. And I'm still released this book. What it's been now? Maybe 4 years now. I'm still getting confirmation of things that I took out because at the time I just was like, I don't even know where that came from. And that's because you allow
Downloads.
downloads, you become a
Right.
conduit. You become a
Right.
conduit. And so the best thing, like now, a lot of stuff I just took out. I wish now some of that stuff I kept some. I wish I kept it all, and you put it to the side because the confirmation. Oh, Caribbean Grimoire. Oh, you did that for a couple of years. Yeah. See, so yeah, so it's just I find the reason why I came up. Oh, hey, Moonfeather, how you doing? Peace. The reason why I say I'm an eternal student that keeps good notes is because I also realize too that when you share your notes with like-minded people, you're actually some people sigh a breath of relief. I'm not alone. Like, oh, somebody else is thinking like and
Right.
sometimes that's the best thing you can do. It's not going to be anything specifically that you say, but
Right.
just for somebody to say, yeah, I do the same. You kind of think that makes you weird in the wrong way, but it actually makes you weirdly connected in a magical way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, man. So we have a love for books in common. I have spent $200 on one book before. bought both of Azazel Bay's $144 comic books. So I believe in books. I got over 1,000 PDFs, and the grimoires that I really wanted, which is Kenneth Grant,
Hmm.
really expensive. So I did exactly what you said. I went to Office Depot and had them printed out for me. I
Yeah.
binded it, and now I got the book. And now they sell for like $100, a couple hundred. You know what I mean? So that was good advice, ladies and gentlemen, that he gave y'all. Find workarounds. You see what I'm saying? Um, how many books have you written? I know you just
Okay.
wrote one on Star Trek and the occult meaning of Freemasonry. So that's two. Have you written any more?
So a total, I've written two. Well, I have more that I haven't dropped, but I got actually I'm about to start dropping some more books. But right now that's been published, I've written two. I co-authored one with my son, uh,
Okay.
which is a kid's book, and then I've published two other books because I have my own publishing company. So, and then what I found too is like anything you do, it's like if you're into sports and you watch Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant, whoever it is you like, LeBron James, you watch them be great at what they do. It looks like it comes easy to that person, but they put in the work, and then once you put in the work, you establish that cheat code. So I recently found my cheat code. I found that I have all these books inside of me, but I try to approach it in the ABC. I do step one, step two, step three. But what I
All right.
found is that when I get the feeling, I just write. And so
Okay.
now that I know how to format a book, uh, I just go. I dropped this Star Trek book maybe a month and a half, 2 months ago. When I was mailing out the first copies, I was wrapping up another book and starting another one because now it just kind of flows like that, and you get in that rhythm. And so when the major point I want to make is just that anything that we do, you want to place yourself in a position to receive at all times. So when you get that feeling, sometimes it might just be a feeling like I need to burn some incense or some sage, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
or maybe you get an idea for a quick ritual you can do right where you're at. Man, knock that out. Don't put it on hold. Don't
Right.
put it on hold
Right.
because some of those things that you do in the immediate is just like drawing up a sigil and forgetting about it.
Mm.
And so when you get those feelings, uh, sometimes I'd be at work on lunch, and then I just say, you know, I'm finna set aside a piece of this sandwich, and I'm gonna dedicate it to XYZ, and I'm gonna do this and that, and you just roll with it, and you go with
All
it,
right.
and
Very moving.
you just follow it right there in the moment, and
Right.
those are the cheat codes for perfection, right? Like I said, we look at certain people who are good at what they do, and what it is they've put in the work. And I heard a saying recently: practice doesn't make perfect. It just makes you better, and that's what it is. Once you get better, and I'm gonna keep it real. I'm from the Bay, so everything from the Bay, dudes from the Bay Area, kind of slick talkers. So they always say, if you knew better, you do better, right?
Yeah.
So once you know better, now it's just the process of doing better. So you just
Right.
start doing it, and so a total of I've published five, two of which I've written, and then I co-authored a book with my son, Dana's Bart book. It's a children's book, and we're actually working on his next one.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Great work. Great work. Are you in the process of making something else, or
Oh
um
yeah, yeah. Actually, I have. I'm doing. I'm working. My. I have two books that I know I can't rush the process on, but these are like my next babies.
okay.
And so one is I'm working on a book of urban dream symbols. So it's a book of symbols, but I want to make sure that we have like urban symbols because sometimes in a dream, and it's amazing I'm speaking on to you guys. I haven't shared this with nobody. This is something I'm working on. But we started off and spirit told me to speak on the hood. But yeah, I have an urban dream symbols book. And actually I got another book right here. I'm kind of using this is one of the best books on symbols that this is my go-to. This one and J.E. Surlott. J.E. Surlott has an encyclopedia of symbols, but this is my main go-to. And so I'm trying to come in the aspect of this, just in terms of something more concise, because J.E. Sherlock's book is like 3 times thicker than this one.
Okay.
So I want
Okay.
something concise, but I want it's a book of urban symbols, and I'm working on that. And then I'm working on another book about Tahuti, and I'm not rushing that one.
Okay.
I'm not rushing that one on any levels. I'm hoping that this is my not my magnus opus, because I ain't going nowhere yet, but I'm hoping that this is like it will be a culmination. Are you familiar with the Waspe Bible?
I am. I have not read it, but I am familiar with it. Yeah.
I have my own copy of it. Oh, it's an incredible document. I have it actually. It's in the house. I should go grab it, but it's an incredible document. Uh, I recommend it to anybody. I
Okay.
want to I want to say that when I got OASPE, it's spelled OAS OASPE OASHPE, I believe, or
O
OS
A S
OASPHE
P H
OASPE
Wasfe. Okay.
OASPE Bible. And it was written by some dude like in the 1800s, late 1800s, like 1882 or something.
Okay.
And it's just the other theologians don't consider it an actual holy book, even though he calls it a Bible. They
Hmm.
say there's qualifications for things to be considered a holy book, and he violated one of the cardinal rules, which is you can't write a holy book through automatic writing. So he did this, and but I know, and I know that we know that automatic writing, you that's nothing different than what Muhammad did with the Quran, right?
Right.
You get a channel and you work with it and you compile it. But if you get that book, now the PDF is out there easily. You can find a PDF for the Waspe Bible easy.
Say less if you
Um,
said that.
oh yeah, because I had the PDF before I bought the actual book.
Okay.
But you go into it and just the story being told, because in that book he has all the gods as a part of a council. So you'll find scenes where uh where Thoth is interacting with the Archangel Gabriel, and
Mm.
you know, yeah, it's an amazing document. It fired my imagination, and whenever I speak of my book for Tahuti, always in my mind I always see the Waspe Bible. I see it right there because
Okay.
it's a dope book, and what I like the best about it is in the back it's like an appendix,
Hmm.
and it gives definitions for different deities and concepts. And there were things I found in there in that appendix that I'd only heard C. Freeman L drop. You know,
Mm.
things like that. And
Yeah.
you look and you'll say, "Oh yeah, this is it. This is the right one." You know,
Yeah. I want to go to another comment that Denise said. Books are sacred talismans. They hold the key to elevating society in many ways. I'm so happy to hear you discuss the importance of readings and cherishing them.
Ashe, Ashe.
Much
That's
much
true.
wisdom in that,
True.
especially coming from her. She has a couple books that are just dynamite. I always
Wow.
recommend her. You
Okay.
know, in case people want to get your work, or do you teach classes or anything like that? How do people
Actually,
connect with you?
I'm about to begin. I said earlier how on the West Coast, it's not like down south and east
Mm,
where everybody's geared towards and willing to spend for consciousness. But I've been initially approached by a bunch of people out here physically that said they were willing to take a class, and then uh, somebody hit me up and said, "Man, you ain't got to do it in person. You can do it online." So actually, I'm in the process of putting together a curriculum. I surely am.
okay, okay, all right, and we got to do this again sometime. I mean, this is very, very enlightening. Thank you so much for coming and speaking with me today. Um, any final words of wisdom, suggestions, anything at all that you want to say to the people before we wrap this up?
I do. And again, you got to move in spirit. And when I was thinking yesterday about today, uh, I was spirit hitting me with something, because sometimes spirit will motivate you to talk, and sometimes it'll motivate you to shut up, and you won't be able to open your mouth. And
Right.
uh, uh, something hit me. Uh, soul alchemy versus social alchemy.
Mm.
And I feel like that's like a good way to sum up what I do and what most of us do. We just don't consciously have those two categories. That soul alchemy, that's the inner work we do. That
Mm-hmm.
that's that as we build and work on our inner selves. But down the social alchemy, that's the aspects like I was saying in the beginning about like with my godmom and trying to wake up the dead. That's an alchemical process as well. You have to find a balance between the two because those sayings are true. What's good for the goose ain't always good for the gander, and what's good for you, it might not work for the next person. You know,
Right.
and so just the only thing I want to say is soul alchemy versus social alchemy. Just be aware of the two, and the more you focus on the soul alchemy, the inner alchemy, the social part comes along. Because I say this a lot, and it might sound like I'm being kind of crass or facetious or whatever,
Oh, you're
but,
fine.
but a lot of people in this conscious community, they say I'm a black sheep. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're really just a fucked up person, and that's all right. And hey, and that's all
Right.
right because you can work with that. You just got
Right.
to be honest. It's not that you're the black sheep.
Right.
It's that you got some things you need to work with. So
Right.
your family's not against you because you're practicing magic, man. You just some people just like you might just be a low key asshole, and so
Right.
that's the difference between soul alchemy and social alchemy, right?
Right.
Because magic is very practical, and it's one thing to have these aha moments and these magical moments with self, but it's another to go out into the world and work that same social alchemy. Because I had a mentor. I was very good in chess, and this is the final thing I'll say. I had a mentor. I was very good in chess at a young age. I used to carry around the little magnet chess thing. And I'm willing to play anybody. And
Mm.
so, being young, I thought that if I could beat you in chess, that meant I was smarter than you. And so, I had a mentor that I truly respected, and I just wanted to beat him just once in chess. And so, when I finally beat him, I banged on my chest like King Kong. And he told me very simply, he said, "Now you've mastered moving pieces. Now master moving people."
Mm.
And so that took the chessboard from being flattened in front of me to
Mm.
being where you're now. That's when I learned the importance of I don't have to be the player moving the pieces. You start to learn. So, just remember that that's magic. First, you learn to move pieces, and then you learn to move pieces because that's magic. And the truly magical aspect is when you move pieces and people from long distance. You know,
Right.
and so that's the only that's the only closing thoughts. And I'll say, if you haven't already, get you
Metaphysics of Star Trek.
get you a copy of the Metaphysics of Star Trek. It's
Right.
technology, customs and culture by the professor. Uh, www pillarbookpublishing.com.
And all of his information, the professor's information, will be in the description box. Thanks again for being a guest on here, Professor. It was a joy and a pleasure to have you on here. And to everybody who was in the chat and who tuned in, I am Magic Lacroix. Once again, the Professor, Michael
Peace.
Bell, and we are out of here. Peace.
Peace.